You know what, kid? You aren't half bad. Oh, thank you, Mr. Pencil. I can't wait to see you suffer. What? Nothing. Thank you to our final patrons, Strawbones, Rebel4765, and a Midnight Gemlord. Now, before I'm in this breakdown / discussion on being the main character of Fortnite the Apocalypse and how I think he's the perfect main character for the series, please leave whether or not you think Percival is the perfect main character for the series in the comment section down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, be sure to hit that little notification so you miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do a Patreon down below. We support for as low as $1 a month, getting exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member to the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Now, let's hop into the discussion. What's up, guys? Look at the Pencil here, and yeah, I really think that Percival is the perfect main character for Fortnite the Apocalypse, and let me tell you why. For the longest time, I will admit, I was like a couple people out there. I was very, very, very excited to see Tristan be the main character of Fortnite the Apocalypse. If you go way back, like, shoot, the series has been serialized for over a year and a half now at this point, I'm pretty sure. You go way back to, like, before the series was ever even produced. Before, I think it was literally just announced. And Nakaba said, "Alright, y'all know what time it is? You know who's gonna be the main character? The son of the two previous main characters. You know what it is? It's gonna be Tristan, baby!" And admittedly, that was set up right at the end of 7 Deadly Sins. Obviously, what was the final panel? It was obviously Meliodas and Tristan walking off into the happiness and knowing that there was going to be a sequel series where they would suffer a whole lot more. And with that being the case, I was ready. I was hyped. Obviously, I love Meliodas. Obviously, I was mostly indifferent / liked aspects of Elizabeth. So, obviously, their kid being the main character was really, really cool. Especially considering they'd be a hybrid. We get to see both of their powers at the same time. This was different from something like Boruto, where it was like, you know, like, you gonna be a ninja. That's about it. I didn't necessarily think there'd be any unique things coming from that. But with something like 7 Deadly Sins, we have literally a human goddess hybrid and a demon coming together and making a kid, and that was going to be super duper interesting. And obviously you could have a whole ton of interesting plot stuff with the fact that Tristan knew the whole story of 7 Deadly Sins, literally had it downloaded into a perfect, I'm assuming, like 3D realistic anime into his head by Gother. It was all beautiful, it was all perfect. I was ready. And the thing is, I believe before the series actually got serialized, he came out and said he changed his mind. Like, Tristan was not going to be the main character anymore. I remember hearing that, but the thing was, that happened at least a couple months after, I'm pretty sure. And thusly, my brain had already internalized main character, Tristan. And thus, to this day, I wish I could say, you can go back to the early reviews and check it out. But no, you can still hear it in some reviews to this day, that I will call Percival Tristan and Tristan Percival, because in my weird, stupid main character name brain, I can remember a whole bunch of stuff, but for some reason, the name of these very two distinctly designed characters just constantly flips up, because I remember Tristan being the main character, or that's what was supposed to be the case, until Percival came along and stole the spotlight. And I will admit, at first, the boy was a little bit salty. Mainly because I was like, well, if Tristan's not going to be the main character anymore, he's just going to be a side character, or one of the main characters, then he's going to get done dirty. And of course, this was coming from a very, very biased King fan perspective, where I'm like, darn, bro really got pushed to the sideline so easily. They're going to do the same thing to my boy Tristan. And for the first part of the series, it was looking like that. Like, we literally didn't get a mention of Tristan until what? 50-something chapters in? Like, seriously, we seemed to be in a drought. And we were actually in a drought. And I really, really wanted Tristan to be the main character. I thought it was cool. I thought it'd be a nice follow-up. I thought we'd have an interesting power set. All that. However, now that I've grown to be a wiser man, I can realize that in reality, Tristan definitely would not have worked as well as a main character as Percival does for the story that Fortnite the Apocalypse is trying to tell. At least in my mind. And let's go into why. Number one, the thing about Percival is that we know fundamentally nothing about him. Like, we know his grandfather, his pops, And that's about it. We know where he came from, quote unquote, but we don't know his mama. We don't know his grandmama. We don't know his grandpappy. Well, we do know his grandpappy, but we don't know his other grandpappy. We have no idea of his lineage. We have no idea where his powers came from. It just seems to be this really randomly lucky, powerful dude that happened to have hero type magic. He, for all intents and purposes, is a total enigma. And ironically enough, I think that works better than what Tristan would have been. Because the thing with Tristan is that we knew everything. We were there. Ironically enough, there are some gaps in our knowledge, but we know a whole lot about Tristan's backstory. And the thing about that is, it leads to a lot of constriction. Like, Nakaba, as a storyteller, inadvertently, by having Tristan be the main character in the first draft, probably found that, well, I can't really tell many mysterious, interesting stories with this guy, because, like, everything is already explained. We already know everything about the Demon Clan. We already know pretty much everything there is to know about the Human Clan. Like, we have all that data, all that information, all that special sauce. Meaning that Nakaba, a guy who, shockingly enough, revels in mystery if you look at all of Seven Deadly Sins for the longest time, he wouldn't have that much freedom. The thing is, with Percy, he literally has all the freedom. Has, had, will, like, we still know very little about Percy. Like, despite knowing a fat chunk of his lineage, we just found out he has a brother who may or may not even be real. Like, legitimately, we are in a very interesting spot with Percy, because Percy is allowed to be way more mysterious, because unlike literally every other Four Knight, he has no connections to any previous characters that we know from the previous series. Every other knight does. Heck, his this sounds weird, but his side characters that he picked up along the way, some of them have more connections to the previous series than he does. Donnie is related to Hauser, somehow. Somehow. Once again, scan the whole original series countless times for a sister that Hauser never had. But still, even with that being the case, Donnie's related. But Percy, he has ties to Camelot, but we never heard of Ironside. We have no idea what Avar is from a geese in terms of a Seven Deadly Sins fan. We are basically thrown into the water just raw with nothing. No swim gear, nothing. Just like in regular Four Knights reader would be. Typically, you'll hear me constantly talk about all the time. You get more out of Four Knights if you read Seven Deadly Sins. You always get more. You always get more. In the case of Percy, I don't know. You get nothing. Other than knowing what Camelot is. But even then, we barely got any at Camelot when you really think about it in the original series. So, realistically, we barely know anything about Percy anyway. And that mystery, that strangeness, that chaoticness that comes from knowing nothing is what Nakaba loves, and admittedly, it's something that I love when I'm reading. So when I think about it, if we had someone like Tristan or Lance or heck, even Gawain as a main character, I think it would be lesser, because we know things, and mystery is a great way to pull your readers along, drag them out. Think of Meliodas himself in the original series. What did we actually know about Meliodas for the longest time? Like, we found out he was something other than a normal human, like what, 10, 15 chapters in when he first showed Demon Mark? And even then, we didn't know the full context behind what that was until the end of season 1. And then we didn't find out the full context behind what that was until like when the Ten Commandments got released. And we didn't find the full context behind that until he died. And then we didn't find the full context behind that until like he revived. And we had a whole 6 month time. Like, legitimately, the mystery of main characters is something that Nakaba does really, really well. And I think Percy allows us that mystery infinitely more than any of the other Four Knights in terms of main characters, Tristan included. And sure, don't get me wrong, Tristan has mystery of his own, like the whole idea of him being a Nephilim, what that means, all the good stuff behind that. But in essence, we know the parts, just not what they're like put together with Tristan. Meanwhile, we don't know the parts, we don't know the manufacturer, we don't know what we're supposed to put them together as, all that with Percy. And I think that makes Percy really good as a main character on that front. He is a mystery in of himself. We know a lot about him. We know what his likes are. We know what his dislikes are. We know he loves his friends. We know his magical power. We know his other magical power. But explanations behind the two magical powers, non-existent. Why he's like this, non-existent. He has a brother now existent. He may have another if history is anything. Like, once again, this is my knowledge solely from Overly Sarcastic Productions, Percival does have another half-brother who's supposedly from Farfalese. Where's he supposed to be from? I think he's supposed to be from Africa. So, like, there is definitely possibilities that 90 chapters deep, with our main character being Percy, we know nothing about him. And I think that's the most interesting way to write a main character. If you know everything about your main character from the start, they kind of get boring. Like, no offense to characters like Midoriya, but, like, dog, I know your whole story from round start. Like, I'm sorry, you became the greatest hero. Wonderful. We're following you doing that. And that's cool. I don't mind it. Same thing with a character like Aang. He's the Avatar and he's the master of all four elements. Bada bing, bada boom. We have a story. And, like, that's fine. It's good to give your characters, especially your main ones, clear overarching goals that they need to complete with a relatively clear path that allows us to fill in the gaps, essentially, between start and end. That is perfectly fine. I'm not saying don't do that writing choice. It is one of the most common because it's really, really good and really easy to work with. However, the Nakaba writing choice, where you still get to have that overall end goal, but you know fundamentally nothing about the main character on a grand scale, is great. That's why I think Meliodas works so well as a main character. And heck, the same case is even with Elizabeth. Remember, Meliodas and Elizabeth sort of had the same dualistic narrative, where we really don't get the full context of their story until Elizabeth literally goes into a coma around 250 chapters into the narrative. The story only has about 100 chapters left. So if Percy is any comparison to that, we are not going to know Percy's lineage, the full stake of his powers, all of that until, like, probably another 4 or 5 years. Just going on the history of Seven Deadly Sins and how long it took to publish in order to get to 250 chapters. It took a hefty second. And that's only one of the reasons why I think Percy works so well. I also think Percy works well as a main character in comparison to characters like Tristan and Lancelot, and maybe Gawain. Gawain's sort of up in the air. We don't know much about Gawain, which is also a good thing. You know, mystery's nice. We have a character that knows nothing about the world. Like, legitimately nothing. Like straight up, bro, lived on a rock. Like a really tall rock, to the point where it's called the Finger of the Lord, but, like, all he has is a really big rock. And due to that, he is extremely interested in the world around him, meaning we will actually get characters who are engaged in the world around him, and will use Leonis, and not just Leonis, but all Britannia, as an actual place to explore and much less of a set piece. Because, to be fair, original Seven Deadly Sins world building worked because we had a lot of world. Like, a lot of worlds, plural. Like, we had like 5 different realms that we could all explore and learn about. But the thing is, we didn't necessarily do much exploring and learning because the characters mainly used it as places to fight or places to tell the story. And then, of course, you know, every single narrative is just that. Like, we have a story to tell. Let's place it somewhere. But the thing with Percy being our main character, he fits perfectly with this new idea that Nakaba's going with for this series. He gave us all these realms. He gave us all these locales. He gave us everything, but he didn't necessarily flesh it out. But now with Percy, a character who really wants to know what the world is about, we can flesh that out beautifully. Look at the entire first chunk of 4 Nights. Until we got to the Leonis arc, around 50 chapters in, what were we doing? We were visiting small towns, learning about their culture, going through them, figuring out things about them, from Echo Gorge to Donnie's little village that they helped save from the big bad wolf, to Anne's little town that nearly got sacrificed so they could seal away the demon clan. Literally every single little bit of travel we do is actually getting good, thick, meaty, juicy, proper world building because we're actually with a character who cares about the world and what it's building. Meanwhile, with Meliodas, this is no offense to him, he had a goal that was pretty independently separate from the world he was in. Like, sure, he needed to do things within that world to get things done, but, like, his main goal is to get strong enough to erase the curses. He didn't necessarily care about learning about the world. Meanwhile, Percy's main goal is obviously to smack King Arthur and smack his pops up, but he still is very interested in exploring a world he's never been to before, which is something that only he can provide as a main character, because one, Gawain just generally doesn't seem that interested in anything that isn't herself or Isolde, which, you know, I can't knock her hustle, but doesn't fit within the current context of the narrative we're building. Tristan literally had the plot. So did Lancelot. They literally had the whole plot injected into their heads, and they just have a main goal. Lancelot's main goal is getting Jericho back and smacking King Arthur. He couldn't really care less about how he does it as long as he does it. Same thing with Tristan. He just wants to live a happy life with his homies and his family. That includes smacking King Arthur and making sure he doesn't do anything bad. And thusly, he also couldn't necessarily care too much about the world. However, with Percival, the main thing he cares about is the world, because he's finally getting to explore. His main motivation set up in chapter 1 was to explore and make friends. So of course, he's allowed to explore and make friends in a world where Nakaba is very focused on world building now. So we get to have a main character that perfectly slides into the crutch of the narrative, which is exploring these worlds we already quote unquote know so much about. We're traveling to the fairy realm right now with Percy's group. And when you think about it, the fairy realm got some exploration, like in Lancelot's one-shot, and what little we saw of it in Seven Deadly Sins, but it wasn't explored that much. Now we can actually get into fairy culture, what the people are like, what the hierarchy is like now that King and Diane are ruling over it, with the giants kind of infusing Megadozer into it. We get to have so much juicy stuff about that, and we're going to get to learn because our main character genuinely cares about that stuff. It's something that he has never seen before, and it's something that we have never seen before, which makes Percy kind of simultaneously his own very mysterious individual character that we're going to continue to learn more and more about as the time goes on. But at the same time, he's also a perfect reader analog, where we want to learn more about the world, we want to engage with the story, we want to do all that, and Percy's like, hey, I want to do that too, and we dive in together head first. So we never necessarily have any reader character dissonance where we're like, why are we doing this as characters? We don't necessarily care. Meanwhile, the characters are also like, why are we doing this? Because we don't necessarily care. There's no time with Percy as our MC world building and our characters not caring about it, because Percy always cares about world building, just like we always care about world building. So it's the perfect storm. Nakaba, due to having Percy be one of the four knights, having him be our main character, essentially allowed him free reign to design the structure of the narrative however he wanted to. So now we get to have this full roaming adventure with a character who wants to go on a full roaming adventure. Meanwhile, I can definitely see why he split up the groups the way he did now, because with that being the case, Lance couldn't give one hoot about an adventure. He wants to get the job done. Tristan couldn't give one hoot about an adventure. He wants to get the job done. We even see that in chapter 89 where he's like, hey, Dad, you know, this ain't really an adventure, dog. We just trying to get this thing done. You know what I'm saying? So obviously, we follow these two characters, or this character who wants to learn, and we get to learn with him. So we get this perfect duology where we are getting everything that Percy wants, and Percy's getting everything that we want, and we all do a Millie Rock on any block, and I think it's beautiful. I think it's wonderful. Another thing that makes Percy the perfect main character, he's so happy to be alive and with his friends. So when we get to break him, he will be so interesting to watch. Now, admittedly, I distinctly remember somewhere in the comment section someone saying that Nakaba said Percy will get dark. I cannot find that interview anywhere, nor can I find that comment. Unfortunately, that's the issue when you have over how many, 700 something videos up. Even if I were to go to my comments, scroll all the way down to the bottom, which would take 15 years on its own, I know my computer processor would explode because it's old and needs help. So I'm not even going to risk it. But I remember a comment, and even if that comment is just a fabrication of my memory, and that interview doesn't exist, I know Nakaba. One way or another, he likes to make his characters suffer. Look at every single main character, all the titular characters of Seven Deadly Sins. One way or another, they suffered in grievous ways, whether it was physically, mentally, spiritually, one way or another, they suffered. And you know who suffered the most? Let me stroke my beard and try to remember. It was Meliodas. What was Meliodas in the original series? Let me stroke my beard and try to remember. It was the main character. And Percy, being so happy, gives us this wonderful, joyous, amazing character that we get to look back on after Nakaba breaks him. And I hope he does. And I know, that's bad, that's awful. You know, Percy, he's a wonderful kid, right? He doesn't want to do anything bad. He, in fact, hasn't even said he really wants to, slaughter his dad for slaughtering his gramps, nor really slaughter Arthur for making his dad slaughter his gramps. He just wants to smack them for being meanie doo-doo heads and committing. What is that? Is that still Patra? I'm not sure what kind of side it is, but it's some kind of side. And with that being the case, it's obviously he has a long way to go. Lancelot will slaughter you. Like he's a kind of guy who's like, yeah, it's either you or me, and sorry, buddy, it's not gonna be me. Do you see what he did to every single one of the Dark Talismans? Bro's about that life. Bro's definitely about that life. Tristan, he didn't want to, but if Percival's friends did not get up the second they did, Percy was going to be put into a pack. Percy was going to be lit up by Tristan if the gang did not rise up. Gawain, what was her introductory scene? She met Pelgard, got called a woman, and then was immediately about to execute bro, along with Percy. We got some cold-blooded slaughterers on our side right now. They are all about the business in one way or another. But you know who isn't about the business? Supposedly, I am 100% still on the fact that Percy definitely slaughtered Talisker. I know Talisker was just not knocked out in a crater. That man's dead. But regardless, with that being the case, we have a character who at the moment is a little bit kind, a little bit sweet, a little bit loving. He doesn't want to hurt people. Oh no, slaughtering the innocent or even the guilty. No, we can't do that. It's not like they've done anything that bad other than like trying to execute a whole village of innocent demons and, you know, like threatening to, I don't know, sacrifice an entire town and or like just generally be very, very bad people. Like overall, they've done some pretty bad things. But Percy, well, Percy said, but was it really that bad? Like, Percy really is a really nice guy. And just knowing Nakama, I can see him breaking that down. I can see him tearing Percy bit from bit, limb from limb, until all of his friends are splayed out in front of him, without the ability to heal them, without their help, and watching as they slowly perish because he was not strong enough to do it, and him falling into despair. And we finally get to see the happy-go-lucky boy who wanted nothing to explore the world with his friends break into a manic madman with nothing but the goal to slaughter King Arthur and all his men. And I'm excited. I don't know. I think that's something that only we get from Percy. Tristan, he's a really nice dude, but he's down with the sickness when it gets down to it. Gawain is the sickness. Forget about getting down with it. And Lancelot is also on that same kind of wavelength. He is definitely down with the sickness, if not being the sickness itself. However, with that being the case, we have this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful trifecta that only Percy provides. He gives us the mysteries, the histories, and the disparity of being a nobody made important by fate itself. He also gives us the beauty of a character who is so ready, so willing to go out and explore this big old beautiful world with 5 amazing realms that we can all endeavor to learn more about, which is great. It fits Nakaba's want to world build, it fits my want to learn more about the world, and it fits Percy's want to learn more about the world. All of that lines up beautifully because Percy is our main character, and finally Percy is the happiest, purest, greatest boy to ever boy. He could never be corrupted by the darkness of the world around him. Never. That would be wrong. Percy would never, ever do anything dark and devious, because everything he knows and loves slowly gets taken away by Camelot until he's nothing but the shell of a despair-ridden and broken man. That could never happen. He's the embodiment of hope, and hope never can be filled with despair. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. Percy's friends will live long and happy lives, where they laugh with King Arthur, who they save from chaos, about, oh, remember that time I almost tried to slaughter you and actually succeeded in slaughtering your grandfather? Wasn't that such a great Yeah, Percy's gonna suffer. I feel it in my bones. I don't know why. I know it's a bad thing. I know it's a dark thing, but like, I don't know. No one got off scot-free in the original narrative. Like, not even the children. Even the children can get off scot-free in the original narrative. So, if the prequel to Four Knights of the Apocalypse and Seven Deadly Sins is any indication on the level of suffering, pain, and agony Percival's going to go through, then I am infinitely excited to see this happy little hopeful boy turn into the deepest, darkest, most despairing knight of death that he could ever be. However, that's what I think. Please tell me what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you think Percy works as the perfect main character like I say for 4 Knights, or do you think any other characters would work even better? Please tell me all that and more in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure the notifications so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do a Patreon down below in support for as low as count them $1 a month. You'll get exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Manga the Pencil, writing off.